Hello, one and all, to the newly named gaming business podcast, Capital Games. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
Oh my god, we got a name. We found one. I'm so
Oh my
happy.
goodness.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
So,
What a journey.
yeah, it has been. So for those of you who have been listening from the beginning, all three of you, we were once the Cooperative Game Chat, and we've always said we've hated the name, but me and Zero put our heads together and finally came up with a name that we like, and it is the Capital Games Podcast, and that's what we're going to be known from now on. So, how you doing, Zero?
Pretty good.
Good.
This weekend, one of my Holy Grail games came in.
Yes.
And quite a story behind that one too.
Okay. Well, get into it. What did you get?
So, long story short, there are two PlayStation 1 games that are what I consider my Holy Grail. And the first one is Einhander, which one of my very dear friends, she had gotten me that for a birthday present many years ago.
Yeah.
And then the second one was Thunder Force 5. And the thing about these Holy Grail games is at some point in my life, either the games got lost or they got completely stolen out from under me.
Ugh.
So for years, I'd been just kind of scouring to try to see if maybe a resale shop had a copy for cheap or anything like that. And then, of course, with the Wada Games thing blowing up game collecting and speculating, of course, that's driven both these games just wildly into insane pricing
God,
territory.
how much did this cost you?
Thunder Force 5, this copy had a reproduction cover because the guy had lost the original case.
Okay.
Which was fine for me because I just wanted a working copy of the game anyways.
Yeah.
And the guy had a buy it now price of $100. And unfortunately, that is on the cheap end for that game because unfortunately, there was one copy that I got into a bidding war into a few weeks ago, and the starting price was like $60. So I was like, this is probably going to go insane, but I've seen stranger shit happen, whatever. And then all of a sudden, it just started climbing to like $100, and I was just like, okay, I might have to work some overtime. I'm willing to cap out at maybe $110. That's it. And then right at the last second, the price jumped on this thing to $179. And I was like, Jesus, what the shit is with this game just being priced at an insane price? And then I pulled up all the previous sales for just complete copies that had like the original box, a good condition disc and everything. And apparently it's going anywhere from like $150 to $250.
So is this a rare game? Is that why it's so expensive?
Yes.
Okay.
It was produced under the Working Designs label. And if you remember them during the PS1 era, they did a lot of niche Japanese game localization. And this was one game that was considered on their niche localization sort of thing. So unfortunately, anything that has the pink Working Designs label is unfortunately now a collector's item that is being speculated to hell and back.
Okay.
But for anyone who's not familiar with Thunder Force 5, it's a horizontal shooter game, so think R-Type, Gradius, and that sort of thing. But the difference is just it's a lot faster than Gradius. It's got just one hell of a soundtrack. Just the best way I can describe it is like 80s synthwave meets speed metal just combined together. It's so glorious, and the action is fast and frantic. You've got enemies coming and attacking you from the front part of the screen and the back part of the screen. So you're having to kind of watch both in front and behind the ship, and the game gives your ship 5 different types of weapons, and all the weapons have their situational uses. Like you've got one weapon that is kind of like a homing death ray that is focused behind you. So if you're in a sequence where like an enemy's firing missiles from the left side of the screen and they're trying to touch the tail of your ship, you can switch to this, and then this thing will just start homing in on all the missiles and just blowing them up. And then you've got like a front gun that just mows down everything in the front. You've got homing projectiles. It's a really neat game. It is really damn hard, but um, all in all, it's just one of my favorite games, just from how mechanically solid it is for a bullet hell shooter, and just the music. The music is everything in that game. So
Isn't Thunder Force known for its music?
yeah,
Yes.
Thunder Force has always been known for its music because it's just real interesting, stylistically and everything. And unfortunately, Sega currently holds the IP rights for the entire series.
Hmm.
Um, and unfortunately, they have not um, announced any sort of like um, re-release or maybe sort of like an anthology collection of the games. And honestly, I would love for Sega to revisit the Thunder Force series and just do kind of like a one and done complete collection, going from Thunder Force 1 all the way to Thunder Force 6, and just make a mega pack and just say, hey, here you are. And we don't think this is going to be like something that we can do like a massive printing. So you know what? Digital only, and I would be perfectly happy with that.
What do you mean, like a Switch release or something along those lines?
Switch, PS4, Xbox, I don't
Okay.
care.
Okay.
Hell, even PC would be fine too. But yeah, Thunder Force 5 is one game I would love for more people to have more exposure to, just because it's just one of the best horizontal shooters in history, just from the unique gameplay.
Okay. I mean, I'm not a fan of these type of shooters, but you mentioned Ian Honder, and I played and loved that actually. It's funny. The only reason why I bought Ian Honder because at the time I was on a Square Enix kick, and they were making such great RPGs that I was like, oh my god, I gotta get everything Square. So whenever a new Square game came out, I bought it. I bought, of course, Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy Tactics, Brave Fence from Mushashi, and and then I bought Ian Honder, and I'm playing this. I'm like, the fuck is this? But it was so visually interesting that I actually really liked it. Is Thunder Force 5 is that one of those shooters that is like very visually crowded? Because when I play bullet hell shooters and I play these types of shooters, the problem I always have is I can't see what's going on all the time because of how much is on screen.
Well, that's kind of the nice thing about Thunder Force 5. There is a practice difficulty, and the practice difficulty actually reduces a lot of the online clutter. So
Hmm.
if you're just wanting to play the game just to kind of play the game, then in my opinion, practice difficulty is probably just fine, just to
Okay.
kind of play the game and experience it. But yeah, just um, on normal difficulty, it's the later stages that get so crowded, and you kind of have to be um, you kind of have to learn to boost up the speed of your ship and slow down, kind of on a whim, just in case, to either compensate for being way too slow for a sequence, or just slow yourself down before you crash into something. So
Okay.
it's got a lot to its mechanics, but when you kind of understand the flow of the level and everything, then it all falls together, and it's a wonderful thing.
Good. Okay. Okay. So you said over $100 for this?
Right at 100,
Oh, right at a
because
hundred. Okay.
I think it was like um, I think the price was like $92, and then the guy had charged like um, $5 or $6 in shipping,
Hmm.
so right at $100.
Thunder Force 5, perfect system. PlayStation 1, perfect condition. Looks like it's sealed.
Yep.
$1,529.99.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no game is worth that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I would not encourage anyone to pay that kind of a price for it. Like I said, the only reason and I paid as much as I did is because it is one of my holy grail games,
Yeah.
and I am unfortunately very upset that it was stolen right out from under me. And I swear, if I ever find the person who stole it from me,
Be
then
careful.
um, I will
Be
likely
careful.
I will likely just give them the disappointed dad discussion of,
Okay.
"Hey man, I love you, but I am so disappointed in you."
Okay. Okay. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Be safe.
But yeah, just that would be the angle I'd take because um, for me, just I don't mind if someone wants to borrow a game. That's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. But yeah, to just kind of yank it out from under me, that's just underhanded.
The only person I let borrow my games is my nephew.
Hmm.
And that's because I know where he lives, and if I want it back, I can go and get it.
Yep.
But I'm different with movies because I'm genuinely a person that's like, if you're really interested in the movies I'm interested in, of course I want you to watch them. Here, take
Yeah.
it. That's how I am. But with games, forget it. They're too expensive, and I don't want to lose them. So I don't let anyone borrow them. I think I let an ex girlfriend's brother when I was dating this person at the time. I let their brother borrow Dragon Age Origins, the complete edition on Xbox 360 after I beat it.
Yep.
Never got it back.
Oof.
So,
That's rough.
yeah. But I'm on Game Pass now, so I can play it on Game Pass. Anyway, we'll move on. Well, one of us had to play a new game, and my senses were tingling that you were playing something, but it was not current. So I thought I might as well just take one for the team and play a current game. And I played Trek to Yomi. Came out a couple weeks ago. Played a little bit of it when it came out, but I played more of it now that I got my Xbox Series X. And I'll talk about it quickly. The first thing I noticed when I booted it up was how well it visually represents Kurosawa 1940s, 1950s samurai films like Rashomon, Hidden Fortress, Seventh Samurai. Like they got the look and the feel perfect. Like with the film grain, the bloom effects, the lighting, it worked perfectly. Like once you boot it up, you're like, oh, okay, I know what they're doing, and they're doing it well. And at that point, I was like, great so far. Then you play the game and realize, oh, I can't see shit. I'm, I'm sitting here playing the game, and the first part of the game is in the daytime in a town. And unfortunately, with the bloom effect specifically, the bloom effect distorts some of the visuals when it comes to light, when it comes to being outside in the light on a black and white color. So after seeing the initial graphics and being impressed by it, I had to turn off all the special film grain, the bloom effect, anything that made it look authentic. I had to turn it off because I couldn't see anything out of it. I got into a battle and I had a hard time actually looking at where the sword was on the enemy. So I was like, okay, I got to turn it off.
Ouch.
And I think, but once I got into like the night portions, it was okay. But I didn't keep it on. I kept it off because I wanted to see what was going on. Like I said, visually, it's really good, and it's really good at representing what it's the setting is. Gameplay is way too simplistic. The gameplay is essentially one-on-one with one person, and you have to either block, dodge, or slash. And once you slash them, you essentially kill them. So what you're doing is you're essentially waiting for them to attack, parrying, then slashing, and that's it. That's the game. And even though it's supposed to be a short game, I got bored pretty quick.
Oof.
So And this is a $30 game or $20 game?
I think $30.
Yeah. For that price? No. I appreciate what it's doing, and I appreciate, like, the visuals. I definitely appreciate. But for something so simplistic, the story didn't grab me enough to where I felt compelled to go on despite the gameplay not being so hot. So yeah. I played a few hours of it and I kind of ducked out.
Yeah, and it's a shame too because that's kind of the general consensus that I saw on OpenCritic, that everyone was just kind of like, yeah, blown away by the visuals. The visual design and fidelity is just
Yeah.
so awesome. And then when it just comes down to combat, it's just like, oh yeah, the combat, it's brain dead. And I'm just like, ooh, ouch.
And it's a shame. It really is, because, like I said, first impressions are everything, and it hits that first impression dead on. But you only can go so far. I think and this might piss some people off, I think the only game I ever beat the only game I ever beat that I wasn't thrilled with the gameplay, but the visuals and the story were top notch, was BioShock Infinite. And I remember we were on the Zombros podcast at the time. Maybe you weren't on this episode when we all beat the game, but I remember everyone loved it, and I'm like, it's good, but the gameplay kind of sucks. It's kind of okay, sucks is harsh. It was simplistic, and BioShock's gameplay when it comes to first-person shooters is rather simplistic. There are some light RPG mechanics to it, but it's still finding the person, shooting them with the gun, shooting them with the power, and that's it. And that's the problem with Trek to Yomi. It is simplistic. It's one or two different things you can do, and then move on. And hopefully the story is engaging enough to where you will enjoy playing the game. It's not that engaging. It's a standard boilerplate samurai, like a samurai story, and it's kind of disappointing because the visuals do make it compelling, but after that I kind of fell off.
Yeah. So, and again, just it's a shame because just they hired some top tier Japanese voice acting talent to boot.
Yes, they did.
So just for them to sort of drop the ball with having solid gameplay, that's a bit heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely got the visuals and the audio right in this. It's just sad that everything else didn't turn out the way it could have. So, I would, if you're interested in it, I would say get it on Game Pass and play it. But I can't justify someone paying $30 for this when it's only about 4 or 5 hours long and the gameplay is way too simplistic.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to our stories of the week. And we got some doozies here. So strap in, everybody. We may be talking a while. The first story we will get into is this past Monday. We've had some news come out from different regions about how the new PlayStation Plus is going to work. Things like filters for visuals and how the menus are, things like that. And those are interesting, but they're not really worth, I would say, talking about. The things that are worth talking about, honestly, is what Sony may be doing wrong on this. And the first thing that they're doing wrong is the visual, is the types of the versions of the games that they are offering on hand. It came to report that some games on the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 side are going to be the PAL versions of PlayStation games. Now, to most, that may not mean that may not be a big deal, but for those of us who got the PlayStation Classic, you'll remember that the games that they offered were all PAL versions at 50 megahertz or 50 hertz, I think.
Yeah,
Megahertz.
50 hertz.
Jesus Christ, 50 hertz, and that means it's not going to be at 60 frames per second. It's going to be at 50
frames per second. Yeah.
Right. So those who are used to having it in 60 are going to have a less smoother, maybe more choppy kind of feel to the game, especially with something like Ape Escape, where the use of your sticks are crucial to getting things right in the game. And if it's not running on 60 frames, it's going to feel a little off. Let's talk about this first issue then, Zero. What did you think when you heard that some of the games that are being released are going to be PAL versions on PS Plus?
On the initial read, I was just like, my God, it's the PlayStation Classic all over again.
Yeah.
And on reading further, apparently it's first-party published games and first-party partner published games. So even potentially stuff like Tekken could be, Tekken 2 could be affected by this.
Yeah.
So, and when I'd heard about this whole, the PAL versions are being distributed to parts of the Asia region as sort of as a soft launch, I was just like, ooh, strike one right there. Asia was never a PAL region ever. So I was just like, way to really fall flat on your face there, guys. Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, you had to remind me of that when because I thought that PAL is Europe, right?
It was a European video standard.
Uh-huh.
And I believe even parts of the Middle East were considered under this video standard. So some people remember playing their games under the PAL video standard, and those who did, they remember that some of their games weren't running as fast as they were over in North America or even Japan. A good classic case of this would be the original Sonic the Hedgehog in Europe. Yeah, that was running on the PAL version, so 50 frames per second, and well, just that just doesn't do a game like Sonic justice. You gotta have that game running on full bore 60 frames per second. So
yeah.
When you had some of the later like PS3 collections that had like the original Sonic games in there, a lot of European folks were just kind of blown away. They're just like, whoa, what the? Yes, I don't remember Sonic ever being this fast. And of course, everyone in the West and Japan's like, what are you talking about? Sonic's always been this fast.
Yeah, Sonic, with a game like Sonic, you're going to notice that. I found it quite surprising that some people who aren't in PAL territories, who didn't deal with it, couldn't see the difference between 50 hertz and 60 hertz. Maybe because we've been gaming for such a long time, we noticed the difference. But there were literally people who were like, I don't know what you guys are complaining about. I don't see the difference. And I'm looking at it and goes, you can't tell the difference between 60 frames and 50 frames? Really?
Yeah, it's one, something that you can visually notice, and two, the gameplay feel is definitely going to feel somewhat different, especially with a game that requires frame perfect precision like Ape Escape. There's no way you that you wouldn't notice the difference. There's just no way. And hell, even something like Tekken 2, if Tekken 2 is affected by this, yeah, you're gonna notice, because Tekken 2 is a fighting game, and those absolutely live or die on frame perfect precision. So yeah, when I saw some of the posts of people going, what are you complaining about? I don't notice the difference. It's not that big a deal. I'm just like, yeah, either you're just maybe not someone who's gamed all their life, or maybe just, I don't know, maybe you've got terrible reflexes, and maybe just the 50 frames per second sort of kind of goes in line with your terrible reflexes. I don't know.
Or it's the Simpsons episode where Lisa is a vegetarian, and there's Homer saying, "It's a little airborne. It's still good. It's still good." That's what I was thinking. I was like, "Really? You're coping that hard? Okay." But yeah, it blows my mind because they had this issue in the PlayStation Classic. It led to them not getting the sales they thought they were going to have. Didn't they have to price the system down in order to get it sold out in most stores? I think they still have stock as well in their warehouses for this thing.
Yeah, and I think they ended up authorizing retailers to mark it down because it was just kind of okay, we just want to liquidate as fast as possible and just kind of sweep this under the rug.
And you'd think, with the big controversy being it's not in its native speed, that you would then learn for next time, going, okay, when we release this, it has to be 60 hertz. It has to be 60 frames per second. It doesn't matter if the game's a 30. It has to be 60. We have to do that. And they're not learning their lesson again. It's that's the mind-blowing part of this, is just that this happened before. It led to them having disappointing sales when they did it. You'd think that they would learn and go, okay, we can't do that again. So let's make sure that it's done right. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if I guess Sony Europe were the ones doing the emulation, and they just use Sony Europe's stock and I guess what their code in order to do this. Then I can kind of understand. But then at that point, you would have to turn around and go to them, either go to them and go, you got to make it 60 hertz. Here's the NTSC copies, or something, God, I am just surprised with this that once again, like Ape Escape. Ape Escape is a game that requires precision control to play the game. When you look at it, it doesn't look like it, but the way that it is in tune with the DualShock, it needs to be precise to work. And if you're running on 50 hertz and at 50 frames per second, you can be as precise as you want on the sticks. It's not going to feel good. So it's going to be real weird playing Ape Escape specifically on there.
Yeah. The second issue that I saw going around, this one was just absolutely baffling to me, especially because just sometime last week it was confirmed that any previous purchases that you had made on your PS3 during the infancy of the PlayStation Network would carry over when this whole evolution of PS Plus rollout, plus the PS1, PS2, PSP, and PS3 content would be recognized. And this one just absolutely floored me. If you bought a PS3, yes, it will be recognized, but there's a problem. Any DLC that you had for your PS3 game will not be supported at this current time. So, this is bad because there are certain games where you had stuff like endings were locked behind DLC. Prime example, and this is a game. Yes, yeah. And that's a game that is on their featured backwards compatibility list. So
another big one, Tokyo Jungle.
Yeah,
like Tokyo Jungle is a game that doesn't require the best of reflexes, but since it's gonna be available, I would recommend anyone to play it. But but there was a lot of DLC for that game. A lot of it free, but there's a lot of DLC. If you're now saying, oh, you won't have access to that, you've now gimped the game to a certain extent where it's not going to be complete.
Yep. And when I saw this, I was just like, guys, how can you drop the ball this hard? You made a wonderful, wonderful news update last week saying, hey, by the way, all of your previous purchases on PS3s and the PSN store will all be recognized and alleviating a lot of people's concerns about having to rebuy their copies. And now you're coming out and saying, "Oh, by the way, all that nice DLC that you may have had for your PS3 games that you purchased digitally on PSN, yeah, sorry, you're going to be shit out of luck. We won't be recognizing that all that DLC at this time." Just, oh,
you know
God.
what it possibly is? Because it's on a... It's not being downloaded, it's being
Streamed, yeah.
streamed. There probably is a different contract that has to be signed in order to get everything in. So if you're getting the game, but in order to get the DLC, you kind of have to make... I might be wrong on this, but it sounds like you probably have to create a different SKU with all the DLC in the game itself, unless that game, that version of the game is there. So, I guess for example, like if they release Ultra Street Fighter 4 on the system, that has all the DLC from Street Fighter 4 with the new characters and everything, and then you're set. But if they were to release Vanilla Street Fighter 4, you'd have to stick with Vanilla Street Fighter 4 with none of the DLC and none of the colors and none of the stuff. So I think that might be the issue. I might be wrong, but I think that might be the issue. It still sucks, but it's actually kind of ridiculous, to be completely honest.
Yeah. My take was they're just probably using all the crazy spaghetti code of PS3 games and just kind of pushing it on their PS Now service. But that was kind of my take on it, and my take was kind of, if you guys are just pushing literally just the digital code of the PS3 games through the PS Now service, why on earth have you not solved the DLC problem?
Yeah.
Just like you've had years to mitigate this.
Yeah.
And now that it's just like, so yeah, we respect the PlayStation heritage, so backwards compatibility. Oh, by the way, PS3 is streaming only, so can't do much about that, guys. It's just like, you guys have had years to try to work this out, make this better. Mm-hmm. Or if the streaming thing wasn't working out, you could have started, getting engineers together and say, hey, we've got a powerful system that Mark Cerny has written white papers about, that it can emulate every single system in the PlayStation, in the history of PlayStation.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing to start running PS3 games. And now it just seems like they've just been caught with their pants down, just with sort of slapdash in this whole evolution of PS Plus, especially on the backwards compatibility front.
Yeah, and you said the right word there, which is slapdash. It just seems like that not a lot of thought was put into this, and what they're really doing is just stapling the services together, calling it PS Plus, and then sprinkling in some PSP and PS1 games and calling it a day. And I don't know. Like, I still see people on Twitter being excited for this, and I'm sitting here going, you guys not... are you guys not really listening to this? I mean, they...
Yeah. It's almost kind of a weird sycophantic relationship.
Yeah. And we'll get to the next part, that I think the last issue that we found out about this just today, actually, specifically it happened, I think it was in Korea. Was it Korea today, or was it?
It's all the Asian regions. It was reported first in Hong Kong. There was a secondary report in Malaysia, and then there was a tertiary report from Korea.
Okay. So it took me a bit to understand exactly what was going on, but you talked about it on our Discord and spelled it out for me quite clearly, like I was 5, so I appreciated that. Yeah, because I was confused. I was like, wait a minute. What? Hold on. So basically what's going on is this. Um, let's say, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. Let's say you bought 3 years worth of PlayStation Plus and you put it onto your account, and the 3 years is on your account right now. If you were to go ahead and say, all right, I want to tier up to the highest one, you would have to then retroactively pay the entire 3 years worth of time at that moment in order to tier up.
Correct.
Okay. So
because funny story about that. So
yeah.
um, there was a video games business journalist by the name of Daniel Ahmad.
Uh-huh.
One of the Black Friday sales, he bought 15 years of PlayStation Plus.
Jesus Christ.
So in his case, if he were to want to bump up to the premium tier, he would have to pay a whopping $900 all at once.
Oh, wow. And this is in contrast to what Xbox does, which basically says, okay, you want to convert that to Game Pass, like was it Xbox Game Pass Ultimate? You said it was like $1 for each dollar is what it is?
$1 per month of Xbox Live Gold. So let's say you bought 3 years worth of Xbox Live Gold, which is the maximum you can stack onto your Xbox account. So in theory, you can either pay $36 outright to cover all 3 years, or you can just say, I'll just pay it over time, and then just your Xbox account would be billed monthly for $1 a month.
Okay. And currently, there's no option to pay it monthly. So, yeah, if you're on PS Plus, if you have that issue and you have that all that time docked in, at this point, yeah, you're going to be stuck with paying that exorbitant bill just to tier up. And furthermore, something I found out, I don't know if this is exactly true or not. Apparently, they are limiting how many times you can. They're limiting how many times you can actually put in codes for PS Plus. So if you have a year, I think that's the max that they'll allow you to do. So you would have to hold on to those cards in order to get the next year of PS Plus. The issue with that is that those cards do expire. So if you bought a lot of those cards, thinking that I can just put them in and put them in the system and done, that's not going to be the case. So you're going to have issues where you're going to have to hold on to those cards, and there's a good chance those cards are going to expire. So you just then spent $60, $50, $40 each on those cards, and some of them are going to be worthless by the time that you get to the time that you can actually redeem them.
Yeah, and with that particular case, that might run afoul of some countries' laws because I believe in countries like Australia where they're very, very pro-consumer.
Yeah.
That may put them in the sights of the consumer advocacy groups where they may push back at Sony and say, this by purchasing this little time card, the customer legally opened up a contract with you for money's exchange for services. And if you're now saying that due to arbitrary bullshit that we're going to go ahead and just zero out that time because it is, quote, expired, then we're going to have a problem. So it's going to be real interesting for countries like Australia, maybe the EU as a whole, because those two particular regions are really, really pro-consumer. So if this is indeed the case that you can only redeem the cards up to give you up to 1 year worth of time, then they may be in for a real rude awakening. And for me, it almost kind of smacks of just the PlayStation headquarters out in North America just not having anyone from like a regional, from the regional offices out in Europe to even ask them, hey, can we legally do this, or is there going to be some backlash due to legal
Well,
technicalities? It
no,
just,
the thing is, though, in the U.S., they can legally do this.
yep.
You may not know this, but gift cards, like let's say you got a Visa gift card for Christmas, you have a year in order to use that card, or else after that year, they slowly charge fees on you for keeping that card active.
Yep.
So that's generally what happens as a rule of thumb with those gift cards. I've heard of
Oh
some gift
yeah.
cards where after 2 years, no matter how much is on there, it zeroes out and it's useless. So that's legal in the States, unfortunately. But
Yep.
yeah, you might be right though. If they are purposely limiting how many times you can actually redeem the cards that you bought, that could be a legal protection. That could be a legal problem. I just don't know that it is, but it does sound kind of kind of shady. This also just coincides with the attitude of Sony nowadays, anyway, who are reminding me a lot, and I mean a lot, of beginning PS3 Sony that got really pompous, really arrogant, and very anti-consumer, and started doing all sorts of stupid shit to the point where it started pissing off people and getting them away from their console because of how anti-consumer they are. Why that's not being shown on Twitter and why that's not being shown on some websites as it being anti-consumer is beyond me. Especially with some of the articles that came out this week. It just blows my mind that almost no one's covering this and giving it the light that needs to be shown. Maybe they're waiting for the actual service to pop up on North America to call this out, but it's looking like more and more this is what it's going to be. And I don't know. I was curious about it. Now I'm like, I don't even know if I want to touch this. And then you said you were going to do it for your journalistic purposes. You were going to go ahead and tear up. I would advise against that if I were you, because you're gonna have to pay an extra $90 just to do it.
Yes.
At that point, I would, as I'm not your boss or anything, but I would tell you that no, just get the list of games, watch some videos of it in progress, see what it looks like, get the feel of it, and then go ahead and we'll talk about it. Because I can't in good faith just say to somebody, oh, go ahead and spend $100 on this bullshit. Have fun. I'm like, no, that's screwed up. But
Yeah.
you're gonna do it anyway, aren't you?
I may not.
Yeah,
I haven't
okay.
quite decided.
Okay.
Mostly because just with me tearing up, it would be $90, but that's because I've got 1.5 years worth of PlayStation Plus currently,
Yeah.
which will then translate to 1.5 years worth of PlayStation Plus Essential. So that's why for me it's just like, not it's not that bad for $90 because I'm not paying 120 for the entire year, but at the same time I'm just kind of looking from the outside with all these issues from this soft launch in Asia, and I'm just like, ooh, maybe I should wait until they shake things out because this looks like just a giant clusterfuck.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the main thing would be to before you plunk down the money to do this, I kind of would wait and make sure that these issues aren't ironed out until you do. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, so and that may be how it ends up shaking out with me. I may just end up going, "Wow, this is just a royal shitstorm." Okay, well, I'm gonna sit and wait and see if they fix the weird region issues that they're pushing PAL versions out in NTSC regions and so on and so forth. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all boils down because maybe. Uh, Maybe by some stretch of a miracle, Sony gets their act together and goes, hey, we should really fix this, or else there's going to be even more people who are going to be real furious with us.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. Our next story deals with not E3, and not E3 is coming up in a couple of weeks. And what I mean by not E3 is that a few presentations are going to come down in a couple of weeks, and the main ones are going to be Summer Game Fest and Xbox Showcase. That is going to be, I think it's June 12th. I think, or around that time is when they're coming up.
Yeah, right around E3, what would be E3 season.
Right. And Nintendo hasn't announced a Direct yet. Sony hasn't announced a State of Play. So that's still up in the air, though I would think by some point, at this point, they would announce it pretty soon. But, yeah. The reason why we're talking about it is there was a quote from Jeff Keighley that happened this week. And, yes, take this with a grain of salt, because the quote we're going to give, I'll give the quote. Basically, what Jeff Keighley said, not exactly, was there are going to be fewer third-party streams this year when it comes to them showcasing their games, because they're going to use the Xbox Showcase and Summer Game Fest to announce all their games. Now, why I would say to probably take that with a grain of salt is because Jeff Keighley is the one that hosts and runs Summer Game Fest. And obviously, he wants a lot of people to watch his show. That being said also, he's usually not wrong about these things. So, I'm of the mind to say he's probably right. This is what's going to happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if Sony says, no, we're going to do ours in July. Like a dumbass. But this calls into question. Zero, you had was there an article or a quote about E3 not being here or something? What was it that you read?
Well, it was more just with the news of E3 being canceled. That was somewhat earlier this year.
Yeah.
Basically, just Jeff Keighley at that time had made a mention when the news started to break out that E3 would just be canceling their trade show this year. Jeff Keighley had kind of made sort of like a soft mention to the world, saying, "Hey, well, kind of like last year, I'll be running Summer Game Fest, so if you want to participate and get your game or product out there, or want to work with me with partnering up with the various online game stores to push out demo copies of your games in progress, let me know. We'll talk it out, and maybe we can set something up so you're featured in Summer Game Fest, be it on Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo." Just it was just sort of a soft mention. And of course, for the last 2 years, with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic, just everyone's just like, okay, well, just I guess we'll be seeing stuff come out through Summer Game Fest instead now. And as it's been in the last couple years, just you had publishers running their own sort of like online announcements. I know NIS had one that they would run with a bunch of other niche Japanese localizers called the New Game Plus Expo. So that was a thing during the last 2 years, though that one was held, I want to say, back in April. So I don't really foresee them respawning their own little festival just for E3 season. So I'm kind of with Jeff Keighley that we're probably going to see less individual publishers doing their own sort of announcements.
Mm-hmm.
And his take of, I think a lot of the third parties are going to be either making presentations or announcements at Summer Game Fest, or they will be partnering up with first party platforms.
Right.
So
and
that's my take on it.
Yeah, and let's not forget also a lot of the third party businesses right now that usually would have something at this time are currently looking for buyers right now. So, we're going to talk about E3 in a little bit, or EA in a little bit. Ubisoft, which usually would have their own stream, they're looking for buyers right now. Embracer probably doesn't have much to go on right now, so they don't have nothing to announce. I think Gearbox is now Embracer, so that doesn't matter. Who else? The only other thing is PC Gaming Show, which is literally the cringiest thing since The Office. But the thing with The Office is it's actually funny when it's cringy. That's not the case with PC Gaming Show. So
Yeah.
God, Zero, we're gonna have to watch that. Ugh.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it because, I mean, and don't get me wrong, Day 9, he seems like an outstanding dude, but my God, he turns up the cringe on the PC Gaming Show.
Yep. God. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that these companies are electing to go onto these specific streams and announce their games because there's enough buzz behind them that people are going to watch it. Which is why when we talked about it a few months ago about like journalists saying E3 is dead, thank God it's useless, where I sat there and went, no, it's not. You don't get it. It's the prime marketing opportunity to get your game out there for people to see it. And these companies see that as a plus. If they didn't see that as a plus, they'd be doing exactly what everyone said they would be doing, which is having their own individual streams and making their own and doing their own advertising. Did you know that 505 Games had a stream last week announcing a few titles?
No idea.
No one did. You know why? No one cared. No one follows 505 Games unless you're really, really, really a big fan of Control, and if you are, you're following Remedy. So you're not following 505 Games. But 505 Games had their stream last week and announced a few games. Do you know how I know that? SkillUp does, the YouTuber SkillUp does This Week in Gaming. And even he said in his stream, in his video, I had no idea they were doing this, but apparently 505 Games had a stream event where they announced a couple of games, here they are, and that's it. That's not effective marketing. That's actually that's pretty bad. So, oh God.
Yeah, and to your point about just when journalists were celebrating the death of E3,
Yeah.
When those articles started coming out, I sort of had a good laugh because while these journalists don't realize it, just a lot of casual people do still buy games at GameStop.
Yes.
And what does GameStop do during E3 season? They have their little in-circuit TV stations that like talked about new games and new stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Those are tuned to like a special GameStop broadcast of all the stuff that's coming out at E3 for like the regular people. And they always have all the E3 coverage just kind of playing there. And it's just like, yeah, you game journalist at whatever outlet you're working at, you may not see the importance of it because you're thinking in really way big picture, but GameStop is seeing E3 as more of an event of, hey, we can drive pre-orders if we show off all the new shit that's being revealed at E3.
But Zero, they're not thinking big picture. They're thinking only in their bubble. They're thinking of, I hate going to E3. I've done it for a few years now. It was cool at first, but I'm kind of tired of it. I hate being in crowds. I hate being in this place. And now they accidentally doxed me a few years ago. So I kind of don't want to be involved with them anymore. So what better way to show my hatred than to say E3 is irrelevant? Who needs it? Which, okay, I understand that the doxing was screwed up and stupid. And they have a right to be angry. But they also have to have enough objectivism to say, okay, am I saying this because I hate what they did and they fucking deserved it? Or do I actually have a point that most companies don't want an E3, don't want to be involved in an E3, and find no value in E3? Because if that was the case, I don't think Summer Game Fest would actually be a thing. So I think it would be I think basically the Game Awards would be the E3 stand-in, and that's it. But that's not the case. So there it is. And that's another thing. The Game Awards, okay? You would think as an awards ceremony, okay? Every awards ceremony just celebrates the previous year in their respective field, okay? Not the Game Awards. The Game Awards take 60% of what they are showing and showing off new games. Why? Because people only care about the newest, the greatest, the prettiest. And you would have to know that and have to understand that if you're covering the games industry. It's something that a lot of journalists do complain about, that they're not introspective enough on previous games. Once the new game comes out, it drops like a rock, and people look forward to the next one. That's what happens. Why is that? Because it's a technology-based medium that gets most excitement from being more technologically advanced. That's why that happens. So, and Keighley has got it right on the money by saying this is still important, we need to do something with this, and he's doing it. And he's proving them right he's proving me right, but he's proving everybody wrong by saying E3 is not irrelevant. It just needs to be shaken up a bit. And he's doing that. And he's going to win at this in the end. It's going to be at a point where if E3 comes back, E3 has to do something different than Summer Games Fest to justify its existence. At that point, you could say, well, maybe E3 is dead. Sure. But you then have to pretty much say, well, if E3 is dead, then Summer Games Fest is what E3 used to be, and that's the new thing, and that's going to be the thing that announces all the new games.
Yep. Personally, Summer Games Fest has done a great amount of shaking things up, and I think the problem that E3 has had ever since it decided to open its doors to the public is it just can't figure out what it wants to be.
Yeah, that was a bad idea too.
Yeah, because in one hand, it's always been a trade-centric show that if you write for the games industry, if you actively develop games, if you're part of a major publisher, that was why you went to E3, because you wanted to show off your product, but at the same time, you could also meet some of the greats from some of the other big studios and, connect and network and do professional business things. Mm-hmm. And then I want to say it was either 2017 or 2018, they decided to open it up to the public. And when they did, it was just a grand mess, because I think the first year that they opened up to the public, they only allowed the public to participate for 2 days only, and that was it.
Yeah.
And of course, they had no sort of organization. A lot of the game publishers and developers from major studios just simply didn't have enough test and demo stations for just the insane amount of people who came to E3 just to try out stuff. So you had people who were waiting an entire day at one demo station and leaving that day going, wow, I got to stand in line for almost 10, 12 hours, and I didn't even get one chance to play this one game that I wanted to play.
Yeah.
And then I think the second year that they opened up to the public right before the pandemic happened, just sort of a similar thing. Granted, some publishers and developers were a little bit more prepared with more demo stations, but it still wasn't enough to just cover the amount of people who were wanting to play and demo stuff.
Yeah.
And then once the pandemic happened, it was just like, hey, we can't do anything because there's a pandemic going on and we've got to abide by the regulations in California. So sorry. Mm-hmm. And then here we are.
Yeah. I mean, opening E3 to the public was a bad idea, even though from what I remember hearing, at the end of the third day, usually, they would just open it up to the public anyway. So I didn't understand exactly why they officially announced that it was open to the public. But all companies really have to do, basically, is keep E3 as a trade show. but utilize PAX, because PAX is smart with what they do. I've never been to a PAX, but from what I've heard, PAX is smart because they not only have a bunch of different games out there and indie games, they also have other things you can do while you're waiting to play games or to do that stuff on the PAX floor. And that's crucial. But because PAX is very gamer and public focused, it can do that smartly. In a trade show, they're more worried about getting business deals done than opening up to the public and letting Joe Schmo, who hasn't had a bath in 5 days, play a game. They don't care. It's not really part of why they're there. So, yeah, opening E3 to the public was a bad idea. I will always say that. And I think they have to let that go. Or hell, make an E3 in New York or call it something else and make it open to the public. Do that. But make E3 a trade show and do something else that is for consumers. That would be my thing. But yeah, I'll end it with this. I think this pretty much shows that an E3 presentation, or what was an E3 presentation, is necessary for the gaming industry, because we've mentioned before, the gaming industry has a built-in captive audience that once for 1 week every year want to be advertised to, and you can't let that go. If you let it go and say, "Oh, we'll just all do our one thing," it's not gonna work. So, yeah, but that's it. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Okay. Do you have more to say?
No, I mean, pretty much you kind of summed it up.
Okay.
Because I'm in agreement that, yeah, there should just be sort of a separate show just for the consumers if the ESA wants to run a consumer-focused show. But an additional point that I was going to add is I would love if E3 does come back and game publishers and developers sort of want to do their own thing or join up on E3 again. I would love to see what PlayStation did many, many years ago for an E3, which was back during the PS3 era. One of the E3s, they made a total recreation of the PlayStation E3 booth area for one of the E3s in PlayStation Home, and you could sort of virtually attend the E3 floor and play demos and stuff like that all on your PS3. And then I think Devolver sort of did something for in one of the past previous years where they had like a virtual E3 booth that you could play, and this demo is still available to this day on Steam. And I would love to see more publishers and developers do that instead of just sort of going, oh well, just well, sucks that you can't be here at E3 because we're doing some cool stuff for all the people who decide to huff it up to attend the show and everything. But yeah, I would love to see more of these sort of virtual demo station sort of things, because I thought that was a great idea, and it looks like Game Fest is sort of going with that direction, because during Game Fest, Steam always has a whole bunch of demos from a bunch of indies, and in some cases even major publishers and developers too, where you can sort of download whatever they were going to take with them to E3 and just play a little bit of it and everything. So would love more of that.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Zero. An interesting topic happened yesterday involving Xbox Game Pass on Twitter. And these stemmed from two articles that, from two articles from Kotaku, but one of the articles talked about a podcast interview from Ed Fries, who was a developer for Xbox until 2004. A very long time ago. The first article was an opinion piece that is strangely on news. It counts as news for Kotaku. Called "After Years of Hype, the Xbox Game Pass Burnout is Here." The article goes on to quote two people in the article claiming that burnout for Xbox Game Pass is currently happening, despite it having 25 million subscribers and a bunch of people who are happy with the service. They quoted Gene Park of the Washington Post and, oh God, I'm going to get this guy's wrong. Is it Troy? No.
Tony Polanco of Tom's Guide.
Thank you. Tony Polanco of Tom's Guide. Both saying that they essentially unsubscribed from Game Pass. Now, if Game Pass is not giving you what you want, of course, you should unsubscribe. And that's what these two journalists did. But they made it quite clear when they unsubscribed that they still like the service and think it's a good service. But if you read the Kotaku article, you wouldn't get that from the article. The funny thing about it is that no one really cared about it until someone on Twitter responded to the article. Do you know who responded to the article, Zero?
Not offhand. The
Xbox Game Pass Twitter. And they basically said, I don't have the quote tweet on me, but they basically said, say you only look for for AAA games without saying you look for AAA games. And they kind of nailed it right on the head. And I would have looked at this article and said, okay, it's a Kotaku thing. It's a news story. They say it's a news story when it's really an opinionated piece, and they did it for clicks for console war clicks. Okay, no big deal, whatever. Then a few hours later, they posted an article about a podcast called the Xbox Expansion Podcast, where Freeze the former vice president of game publishing, his name is Ed Freeze, who was quoted in saying that he's worried about the future of gaming because of Game Pass. And it boils down to, basically, that if people are going to play these smaller games on Game Pass, who's going to buy them? Who's going to actually... What's going to drive sales up to get those profits? And I called this basically deliberate hit pieces, because that's what they were. They were hit pieces. They were basically, they smelled blood in the water. They wanted to have an article. They made two of them, and it shaped discourse for a day or two, while pissing off those two journalists that they quoted in their article. You should have seen their Twitter. Their Twitter blew up because of these articles, and they hated Kotaku for it. They're like, why are you doing this? This is not a story. It shouldn't be. What are you doing? But the question I have is this. Do you feel that Game Pass is a detriment to the gaming industry? And why?
So, for me, it's not quite a black or white issue.
Okay.
So, I'll start with that. Mostly because Xbox has provided some statistics that people who subscribe to Game Pass actually buy more video games than a person who don't.
Yes.
Because of the fact that just you're trying stuff all the time, and due to rights and licensing, games have to rotate out, and typically when that happens, you'll get a nice little warning email by the Xbox media team, and it'll say something like, hey, last chance for this game, and what perk does Xbox Game Pass give you for anything that's on Game Pass? You get a discount.
Yeah.
And it's granted, it's not a big discount, it's 10%, but if you like a game enough, you're going to open up your wallet and say, I like this game, I want to keep it.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay up. I mean, hell, I'm guilty of it, and because I've had games where it just comes out on Game Pass. I love it, and I just end up kind of hopping to and from different games, and then I'll get the reminder email saying, "Hey, by the way, this one game that you liked, it's leaving due to a licensing thing, so last chance to buy it."
Mhm.
And I'll just go, "Yeah, I love this game. I gotta have it."
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned that, because what the article did not mention is that specifically, that it does drive sales to certain games if your games are good. Because if your games are good and you have it there for a limited time, people are going to look at it as, oh, I really like to play this game, and it's not going to be on Game Pass, I might as well just buy it. And that's it.
Yep.
You got your sale. That's great. And I've only heard good things up until recently that Game Pass has helped some studios with getting sales. And that's great. The ones that are complaining, I feel, are companies that may not either one of two things. Either they didn't look at their finances well enough to realize the contract that they signed was not going to be enough to cover their expenses, which at that point, you need a good businessman. I understand that this is a creative medium, but the gaming industry is so business centric. You need good businessmen in order to make your studio flourish. Or the game sucked. No one bought it after they played it and said, this is trash. I don't want to play this anymore. And that's fair. What's going on in my mind is that finally, for so long now, games have been $50, $60, now $70, or $20, $30, $40 with no demos that you can try before you buy. And like it hasn't been since 360 since there have been demos on downloadable games, or demos at all, in that matter, unless you have PS Plus and they release a trial that you can play for 2 hours on specific games. Once you took that away, everyone's been flying blind, thinking, "Oh, I gotta spend $70 on this game. I'm kind of interested in it, but I don't know if it's any good or not. The reviews have not been so great, but it still looks cool. So, okay, I'll get it this time. Oh, I hate this game. Now I just wasted $80. I'm not fucking doing that again." And people are starting to get smart. They're starting to notice that, oh, wait a minute. I need to be more diligent with my dollar and decide what's worth my time and money. And that's the beauty of Game Pass. $15 for 100 games that cycles out, that then you can go ahead, that if you want the game, you can buy it at a discount. It makes sense for somebody who has an Xbox to get Game Pass. I just got an Xbox, and immediately I got Game Pass because it just makes sense to have it. That's how I played Trek to Yomi, and how I finally played it and realized, oh, I'm glad I didn't spend $30 on it.
Yeah. So, and to your point about just the studios who made a gamble poorly on everything, that's the thing that a lot of articles like the Kotaku pieces seem to not realize, that this also cuts on the PlayStation camp too, because the new Oddworld game that was a PS5 freebie, I believe that there was a article or an interview with the creator that came out, and he said that he felt like the game could have done better if he didn't sign the PS Plus freebie deal to have it distributed for free. And it's just like that's really the overarching theme about these little deals with Xbox Game Pass and the promo freebies on PS Plus is they're a gamble. They're just a gamble. Either you get something that becomes sort of an overnight sensation and everyone downloads it and then starts really throwing money at the DLC store. And one of the more recent games that's a great example of that is Fall Guys. That was a PS4 freebie and just absolutely flourished on PlayStation. And you had people just buying the kudos currency just to dress up their characters. So you have stuff like that. And then on the contrasting end, you have games that might have been might have been real niche, and because of its niche appeal, the Game Pass deal may not have been the best idea because it might not get the insane amount of downloads, or maybe it just doesn't have some sort of microtransaction hook to additionally monetize it. So it's just, I definitely agree with you that the smaller studios that are griping about this, they really should hire a business manager or
Yes.
someone to just sort of look at the numbers and say, hey, this is a bad idea. You probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah. And for Oddworld Inhabitants, I think it was Lauren Lanning who made those quotes saying it was a bad move on their part. I hate to tell them this, but despite how good Oddworld looked, it wasn't going to sell well for $60.
Yeah,
What?
it's still a
How,
game that's got a design mindset of an older time.
let me make sure what the price was on that. 'Cause I think it was 60. Because if that is what it was, then no, 40. It was $40. And Oddworld New and Tasty, I think it was 30 when it came out, or 20. And that seemed okay at the time. And I'll be honest, Soulstorm looked interesting, but you're right, it's an old school game. And you have to be familiar with the franchise in order to want to play the sequel. Excuse me. Giving away on for free probably wasn't going to get more people to play it. I don't know what the contract is for people who get it on PlayStation Plus. Do they get more money when people play it? I'm not sure, but I don't think that. I think they, regardless of it being on sale or free on PlayStation, I just don't think it was going to be a hit. I don't think it was going to make a lot of money. So on that end, I would respectfully say to him, I don't think you had realistic expectations for your game, because this was going to be niche at best. So
Yeah.
I
So that's kind of my end with sort of the complaints from some of the developers who've taken these deals from both PlayStation and
yeah.
Xbox to have their stuff featured.
Now the big bone to pick I have is with games journalists, the people who are supposed to be consumer advocates, stating what games are good to play, what are good deals, things like that. And yes, you do your journalism job too by fishing up stories on certain things, but your main job are to be consumer advocates. How can you have these articles that try and claim that people are unhappy with the service, that they're leaving in droves, and the two people that you choose are journalists, number one, and two, you're only basing off of tweets on Twitter, where you're not getting a robust argument or a robust quote. You're just getting someone's thoughts that are truncated in 120, 140, 160 characters. How do you have enough there to have a story to prove that, oh my God, everyone's leaving Game Pass? That's not the case. It's not happening. And it just smelled like a console war type of clickbait type of article. And they got rightly called out for it. And that's when a lot of people read the article and was like, oh, this is bullshit. So
Yeah.
I guess in the end, they kind of got what they wanted. But then again, with Kotaku and I would say their reputation with gamers, it goes to show that either they don't really care about their reputation with gamers, or they're completely oblivious to what gamers are thinking about. Because even if you hate Xbox, you have to admit that Game Pass is a good deal. Just like I think a lot of people will say that the PlayStation Plus may be a good deal if everything works correctly. So you can't just sit there and be like, people are unhappy with Game Pass. No, they're not. They may say that I'm going to unsubscribe for now because there's nothing there for me to play, but I'll come back to it. That's what these journalists said, too. I'm going to come back to it when there's more games. But as of right now, there's really nothing that I'm interested in. So, it's a good service, but, And they extrapolated that to, oh my God, people are unhappy. I'm just like, no, that's not what was being said at all. So, I don't know. I looked at that article and I was like,
Yeah, and I mean, I know some people were trying to make a bigger, or go into a much more bigger discussion that, in my opinion, is kind of a different bucket, in my opinion. But there is concern, and I will say that, in my opinion, the concern is warranted. There is concern that, just gaming may go down this path where you have no way to fully purchase a game, and sure, that is a concern, especially with just how Game Pass has made it easy to just sort of download, try a game out, and if it's not your game, you just kind of delete it from your hard drive and move on.
Yeah.
But that's more, in my opinion, when people are trying to bring that up as a sort of a counterpoint to this whole thing. It's just like, I see the discussion you're trying to have, but that's not part of this discussion of OMGs, everyone is just flying off of Game Pass because Game Pass garbage, because that's just not the discussion at hand here. And yeah, just that gets into more the licensing piece. But again, I was trying to tell some folks in my Discord server, hey, that is an interesting argument, but that's not what's happening in these Kotaku articles. They're trying to make it seem like everyone's just flying off the service because as everything by Bethesda is being delayed, and therefore Game Pass is now a garbage service.
Yeah. Another thing that you just mentioned it, the whole the ownership angle to this, where people are very afraid that if Game Pass becomes bigger, that the companies will not want to sell their games and just put it on Game Pass. That's not going to happen. And the way I know that is because of the movie movie industry model, which is if you want the movie, if you really want the movie, you want to own it, because in these services, they do cycle out. They do take out movies to put new ones in. They do let contracts lapse. So in order for you to make sure that you can watch the movie you want or play the game you want, you need to buy it. And no one's going to want to give up that extra set of money in order for you to own that game. It's just not going to happen. Because at this point, what you're then saying is, well, I think a lot of people are like, well, look at Spotify, look at music, look at how music is now. No one buys music anymore. Okay, music is 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long at best, and is meant to be something you constantly listen to over and over and over again. That works well with Spotify, and works well with that because you can do that over and over and over and over again. And the artists get paid for how much it's being played. That's something they don't really talk about. That for every play, they get, I think it's, depending on the artist, I guess they get a few cents. And then that turns into millions of dollars a week for some, because they're listening to the same albums over and over and over again. But that works for music. That doesn't work for games. People, except for, let's say, games like Fall Guys, or, in my case, MLB The Show, they're not going to want to continue playing the game over and over and over again. They're going to play the game, they're going to finish it, and if it leaves and they still want it, they'll buy it and play it in the future. It's not something they're just going to constantly play over. It's going to be, I played it, I beat it, let me play something else, and maybe I'll come back to it another day. Because if I like it that much, I want to own it, and I will be able to do that. That's what the mentality of gamers is. So I don't see that being a problem. And for Ed Freeze to be like, I'm really worried about Game Pass, it's just strange. Because what it sounds like is we're not going to get the amount of money that we're used to getting by charging $70, $80 for all these games without the option of you to try it for a cheaper price. Well, that's what happens when someone makes a consumer-facing product that works. Consumers are going to flock to it and say, I will try these games, absolutely, for this price. And if I like it enough, yeah, I'll buy it. But put it on here first so I can try it. And then I'll go ahead and buy it. They're just thinking, well, we had it so good where we can just have you pay for it without even trying it. I like it better that way. Well, consumers don't. So you have to go by what the consumers want. And the consumers want to be able to play these games. So you're kind of shit out of luck there. Because if you take that away, I think less and less people are going to be happy about that and may quit gaming in general. So you have it. You're just going to have to work around it.
Yeah, so our last topic is one hell of a whopper.
Oh, yeah.
And this one was interesting because it came out on Friday evening, which is when usually the news cycle dies off.
Yeah.
And this one sort of blindsided me and Wiz just so hard because we were just like, whoa, where in the world is this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, EA has publicly come out and said that they are looking for a buyer. But they do have some conditions, which we'll go into. But long story short is they have been looking for a buyer, and they've apparently been looking for a buyer since March.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah. So, basically, there's really not much to get into. What Andrew Wilson, otherwise known as Android Wilson, is trying to do is he wants to merge with a bigger company to get a payout, but still be in charge of EA through a merger. But a sale is also on the board as well. So, and there have been a few that have been the ones that have been rumored, but the two main ones that have been rumored as potential sales targets are Apple and Disney.
Yeah, and with the Disney sale, that was apparently the original suitor that they were going for back in apparently March.
Right. And I think the issue was price. I think I don't think I read who balked with the price, but I think it was EA who said too low or something along those lines for the price.
And then what made things additionally interesting was Jeff Keighley had reported that apparently EA had tried to market themselves to Comcast more with the angle of merging with NBC Universal.
Yes.
And then apparently just due to differences in the structure and the price, Comcast has dipped out of the sale as well.
Yeah. Without getting into... let's talk about why this is possibly happening. Of course, when you are selling well and selling big, the best thing to do at some point is probably to sell your business for maximum value. That's true. You want to do that because you want to get the most out of your company and then leave before it bottoms out. Now, that being said, okay, if they're doing that, what are they expecting to come out that will bottom out their business? Because if they're doing this, and a lot of companies are doing this now, something has to be coming up that will affect the business in a big way. Because there can't be this many sales going on. and then somebody, and nothing coming in the pipeline that are possibly spooking somebody into saying we better sell now, unless the gaming industry is just so lucrative that it would just be foolish not to sell your company. So we talked about it Friday. I think we should go into the theories as to what we think is going on.
Yeah, sure. I know I sort of kicked things off and said that what's been the biggest moneymaker for EA?
Loot boxes.
Yep. Loot boxes from stuff like Apex Legends, the FIFA Ultimate Team packs for Madden, and the soon-to-be renamed FIFA Ultimate Team packs.
Mm-hmm.
Just those have been big money makers, especially if you go back for the last probably 5 or 10 years now at this point, with how much the Ultimate Team packs bring in. It's just a humongous glut of money. And what would be something that would spook the hell out of a game company that has been making a bunch of money from letting people gamble on things to improve their game? Legislation. That is one way to chill that out. And
Yes.
What if someone at EA has an ear on the U.S. Congress or Senate floor, and their ear has reported back to them and said, "Hey, there is pending legislation that's going to either restrict or outlaw loot boxes. We got to either stop this or get out of running this on our own."
Right.
And
Go ahead.
And that's really my speculation on what could be causing them to sort of rush and find a buyer to merge with and everything.
Right. And I actually kind of agree with you with this. Now, it wouldn't be an EA lawyer who would probably get this. It would be their lobbying arm, the ESA, that would probably have their ear to the ground saying this is what we're hearing on Capitol Hill right now. Or we're hearing on different state legislatures that this is being discussed. So that is a very real possibility of what's going on. But it's so quiet right now that no one's really talking about it because no one's paying attention. And for those of you who might think, well, these politicians don't really care, they probably won't do anything about it. Yeah, you're right. They're probably not. However, it just takes one politician, to go out there and say, this is a problem, and we need to do something about it. Look at the senator, I think it was a senator, when Battlefront 2 came out, who had a press conference in their home state talking about loot boxes in Battlefront 2 and how quickly EA nixed the entire business plan when this one senator, it was a junior senator too, who wasn't there that long, had that press conference and made a big stink about it. Look how fast it took them to take that all away. Think about that. It takes one to get interested for them to get spooked. Because if you have one, then you have somebody who has the ears of the people. And if more people are going to be talking about it and be discussing it and going, wait, what's going on with the game industry? What is this? Wait a minute. I know somebody who whose kid charged their credit cards up to $500 to get FIFA packs. I remember this. That's fucked up. There should be something to do about it. And it's going to happen. It's eventually going to happen. And you know what's going to eventually happen? It's probably going to happen on the Republican side. And the reason why I say this, and unfortunately with not only last week's tragedy, but today's tragedy, the Republican side are starting to use video games again as a scapegoat for what's going on, despite there being ample evidence that it's not the case, that games have gotten more violent, therefore we are more violent as a people. That's not happening. And there's too much evidence now that it's not the case. However, just to get those political points, I will bet money a senator or a congressperson will make it their mission while they're being reelected to make a target out of the gaming industry to a point. Let's say we're oh God, what's his name? Who was the guy in the 90s who was targeting the gaming industry in politics? Was it Lieberman?
Oh, yeah, Lieberman.
Okay, yeah, it was Lieberman. I forget his first name. I think it was it wasn't Max Lieberman, was it?
Joe
Lieberman. Thank you. Joe Lieberman, who was a Democrat, I think, made it his mission after Grand Theft Auto to get hard on the gaming industry, especially when Hot Coffee came out. That was he was so offended by that he was like, these should be outlawed. You should not be playing these. These should not be around kids. Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And it got him to get more power. So, yeah, I can definitely see a politician grabbing this and going, I can use this to get re-election and smear this entire industry, which, let's be honest, it is the gaming industry is probably one of the most anti-consumer industries out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely super greasy.
Oh, yeah. And I can see a politician looking at this and going, I can make a big deal out of this and get a lot of political credit and get a lot of political power by going after these greedy companies that are exploiting children. And that's all you have to say. These businesses are exploiting children. And then you have parent advocacy groups. You have all sorts of conservative groups going after the gaming industry, saying, you know, how could these people do this to kids? How could they expose them to gambling? And all of these things is amoral and yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. And the industry will be forced to do something in order to nip this in the bud. And what they're gonna have to do, and I'll go to what my end all be all will be on this. They'll have to mark anything gambling as AO, because in order to gamble, you have to be 18 plus. With mature, you have to be 17 plus. So you would have to market anything that has any kind of gambling, including loot boxes, as an AO game. And we know what AO games do when it comes to the gaming industry. Most consoles won't even allow an AO game to be made on their console.
Yeah, it's a mark of shame if you get an AO label on your game.
So either the industry is going to have to about face and allow AO games to be on their consoles, or they're going to have to turn around and go, we can't do this anymore. And that could be what's happening. And they're just getting ahead of it and selling it to big conglomerate companies who may not know any better right now.
Yeah, either big conglomerates who may not know any better, or big conglomerates who have even more powerful lobbyists that can push money to sidestep the issue.
And until recently, Disney had that. Apple does. Apple does have enough lobbying power where they can pretty much squash almost any type of anti-business practice legislation that they have. Like, they can do that because I think they actually help the NSA a lot with technology-based problems, but I'm not sure about that. But Disney, with their latest controversy, well, not really controversy, but with their political problems that they've been having, I can see that being a problem. But the other problem I would have then is if Disney doesn't buy, well, with either company really, but if Apple specifically buys EA, kiss multi-platform EA games goodbye, because Apple is a walled garden company and they only make things for their products. So you would see EA get bought by Apple. You're not going to see EA games on consoles anymore. You're going to see them on Apple products only. So that would be my trepidation with Apple getting EA.
Yeah, and that's a fair trepidation too. I just think that with just how important um, the Xbox and PlayStation and now PC markets are for things like Madden and the EAFC games and everything. They're not going to want to leave that money off the table. So I think those games will likely be safe and probably still be multi-platform. But yeah, just going forward, any sort of story-centric single-player projects, if Disney were to buy them up, I would say that they could potentially be at risk of being completely barred off as an Apple Arcade thing.
Yeah. Um, the other thing with Disney is that Disney is very controlling on their IPs. So if I don't know if this will really pertain to EA. I think what will happen is that EA will be the exclusive. If Disney buys EA or merges with EA, they essentially will have carte blanche to any IP that Disney has. With it won't even matter. They won't have to do any business deals. They just have it, and that's it. But that's going to pose a couple of problems. Disney does not like, for the most part, doesn't like having violent movies on their services. They're family oriented. I just creatively think that I think both companies buying EA is a bad idea because something's going to give to where it's going to be a lot less open than it used to be. But I'm just shocked that EA is actually wanting to merge or sell their company. I'm just shocked by it, and I think really something's going on that we're not hearing about, but we're gonna hear about it eventually. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know one of the reports that I was reading with regards to Disney being one of the ideal suitors for a purchase was mostly because of the fact that um, Andrew Wilson would likely try to leverage um, the partnership angle of getting EA access to ESPN, and then sort of tying ESPN with their sports games.
Via
So
sports, yeah.
yeah,
I mean that.
so things like Madden would be able to have like maybe like a mini feed of ESPN going on, so you could kind of keep up with what's going on in the world of American football, and then just maybe a sports feed and something like the EAFC games on whatever international football games are going on.
Mhm.
So it was just like, okay, I can see why they'd want Disney, but I think we had discussed it in my Discord server and everything that just Disney's probably wanting to put less heat on itself. So EA being bought up by Disney is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think EA getting bought by Apple is gonna happen. Which call me crazy, but I think Tencent can swoop in and get him, which would be
Yeah,
terrible, which would be
yeah,
awful. But uh, to me, that's the most realistic because Embracer's not going to do it. It's too expensive.
yeah,
Microsoft is already in a little bit of hot water with getting Activision, so that's not going to happen. Sony doesn't have the capital. Nintendo would just be funny. That would just be funny.
yeah. Yeah,
But
and Nintendo also has a very, very strict, stringent requirement for them to just outright buy up a studio,
mhm.
and EA just doesn't meet those requirements, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
Nintendo's not realistic at all. Um,
yeah. Apple, personally, I could still see sort of happening.
yeah,
Mostly because a lot of the EA execs are actually former Apple alumni.
yeah.
So they could probably sweet talk some of the Apple execs and say, hey, just let EA do their own thing, but you guys ultimately hold the purse strings, but at least let us have a little bit of freedom and input on how we want to do things.
But that's
So that's why personally I would say an Apple deal could potentially be on the cards.
But that's not Apple's MO. Apple's
No.
MO is we own you, we control you, you're part of the Apple ecosystem, and that's it. You're done. That you wanted in. This is what this is. We have a specific way of doing things, and we're going to do it that way. Suck my balls, and that's it. If like I said, to me, you're a little bit doubtful on it, but I'm convinced that if EA goes to Apple, you're not seeing. You disagree, but you're not seeing EA games on anything but Apple. So unless unless Apple is getting into the console market, which they've been rumored to for years, and it's never happened. Especially since Steve Jobs hated console games. Like, didn't Steve Jobs just absolutely hate consoles and was like...
Yeah, and Apple even had a console that was, I think, had a limited release to Japan only, and that was the Pippin, and that was co-developed with, I believe, Bandai too. So, just wasn't a good foray for Apple to the console market anyways, but that could be a story on its own. But I think really where the issue with Apple purchasing EA is really going to be just Andrew Wilson's desire to be the head of the EA part of things.
Yeah.
Especially if Apple were to proceed with this, the first thing they would do is probably just gut him immediately. They'd just be like, nope, get out.
Yeah, just give him his money and leave. Which, if I were, and you almost said Android Wilson. I know you did. But,
I almost did.
I know you did. But, no. But, if Apple buys them, that is going to be the case. Because Tim Cook is only going to want to be in charge. And even if they... That's what I don't get. Why would a bigger company merge with EA? I understood when Activision merged with Blizzard because they may not have been worth the same, but the name recognition itself of Blizzard was enough where to boost up Activision stock, to have Blizzard attached to it made sense. So I understand why that merged. EA doesn't have that cachet anymore. So I don't see why someone would want to be called Apple EA. To me it would be called or it would be Apple Tiburon or something after that point. So I don't see why Andrew Wilson thinks he's going to merge with these big companies when they probably would rather buy the IPs, gut them, and maybe not gut them. They probably would keep the studios, but the
studios they would keep, but I would see them gutting the execs immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Give them their golden parachutes. Be on your way, and I don't see a merge happening. And if Andrew Wilson is holding off, thinking that's going to happen, I think he's in for a rude awakening, because I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a really sweet deal in like the next 6 months. I don't think this is going to happen anytime soon, but I would say in the next 6 months, there's going to be a really sweet deal, but the deal is to buy them outright. It's not going to be to merge. So,
Yeah, either there's going to be a really sweet deal that comes up 6 months from now, and either he's going to be real stubborn and obstinate about wanting to run the show, and then it's going to slip, and just either maybe they've got some sort of nasty sexual harassment case that's in the works that might nosedive the price down.
Yeah.
So,
or it could be as simple as the stockholders of EA get a hold of what the price is. They look at Andrew Wilson and go, that's a great deal. We'll take it. And Andrew says, but wait a minute, I want my job still. And they say, fuck you, take it. And that's it. It's over. Because he has to do what his shareholders and the board says. So if the board says, we don't give a crap about your job security, take the $50 million and leave, we don't care, we're selling. And that's it. It's over. So that could have essentially happened too. But I don't see this happening anytime soon. I see this. If it's going to happen, I would say before the end of the year, I think something will happen, but not now. I think I think more stuff will come out, like talks of the business side going on, what the feel is going on right now, who's interested in buying, what the deal may be, but nothing concrete until probably the end of the year.
Yeah. So, barring some sort of weird sexual harassment case or some sort of weird legislation coming out,
and that would be it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's just kind of like that's kind of like the thing that just happens. Well, either faulty business practices, but that doesn't do anything, or the CEO grabs some woman's butt that he shouldn't have, and that kills the deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are really the only reasons I would see maybe the deal, or the price just nosediving.
Yeah. All right, Zero. We're at the end of the podcast, but as it is the end of the podcast, I have a question for you.
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to preface this by saying, because of you, and I kind of hate you for this, I got an Xbox Series X. And I've been playing it all weekend, and I really like it. I mean, it's an Xbox, but, I do like the system a lot. And it got me to thinking. You have both systems, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Which do you like better?
Oh, that's like telling a parent to pick their most favorite child.
I'm not saying, which one sucks and which one's good. No, I'm saying if you were to prefer to play a game on either system, which would it be?
With being only recently unemployed but now back to gainful employment, points would have to go a little bit more towards the Series X, mostly because of Game Pass.
Yeah.
Because when I was still unemployed and games were just coming out left and right and everything, Game Pass was a godsend when I'd called my day done after spending 8 to 12 hours filling out job applications and slinging them to different websites or email addresses. Yeah, it was great being able to log on to my Series X and just go, okay, what's on Game Pass? Because I'm done applying for jobs for today, and I just want to cut loose and play some video games.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, oh, gross, PS5 terrible, because it's not. It was just more the fact that just for the value-minded consumer that I am, when I'm not nose deep into just reading financial reports on various video game companies, just value is king. I mean, especially when you're unemployed and you have no disposable income because all of your money is trying to go towards bills as minimally as possible. Just, it's kind of hard to beat just getting a bunch of games for free from Game Pass.
That's true. That's true. And Game Pass is a big deal, and it should be included in which system that you're purchasing in order to, if you're only going to get one. I think adding Game Pass is a fair deal. I'm looking at both systems right now on my desk, and I've got to say these are the ugliest systems I have ever had in my life. Like, these are god-awfully ugly. Like, it's embarrassing. We've talked about, I think you've said it first, like, the PS5 looks like a dehumidifier. It really looks bad. Especially with the white pieces that sandwiches it like a backwards Oreo. It looks silly. And we've all heard that the Xbox Series X looks like a refrigerator. And it's true, it does. Like both consoles just look ugly and look embarrassing. And they're very clearly game consoles where in the previous consoles, you could be mistaken if you're not looking to it being maybe a DVD player or a Blu-ray player. With this one, you kind of can't. It's like, oh no, this is a game console. All right.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I told you privately and everything, just when PlayStation made the announcement in December that you could get colored side plates
Yeah.
for your PS5, and the first two color options were going to be just the Midnight Black and the Galaxy Red.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately just put down my cash for to pre-order the $60 Midnight Black ones immediately when that pre-order went up.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, you know, I don't like the new D brand Dark Plate version 2.0 because those just turn the PS5 into like baby's first router um, with no sort of distinctive features. It cut off the little fins at the top and everything. To Dbrand's credit, there are air intake holes, and the air intake holes are filtered. So that's nice if you care about just absolutely bleeding edge performance at the sacrifice of cosmetics. Then, yeah, sure. I guess those aren't a bad buy, but yeah, just for me, I was just like, yeah, I'd like to at least kind of have some distinguishing features to kind of show that it is still a PlayStation 5. But yeah, just that was one of the first things I had to do immediately when the pre-order announcement went live, and I received my plates in January, and it's just been one of the best things ever because the black doesn't break up my AV center, which is full of just black
Yeah.
audio-visual equipment. So
Yeah. I'll get down to controller. I know a lot of people love the DualSense. I get why. The haptics and everything are really cool, but I just love the feel of the Xbox controller. It just feels right, and the grips on the back make it really comfortable, and the way the buttons press is nice. I just prefer the but this is after having it for a week, so I might change my mind on this. But I've got to say, I'm more comfortable playing with the Xbox. And on top of that, I also watch movies and download apps and in order to watch baseball games and YouTube and stuff on my game consoles. And more often than not, the apps crash on the PS5 a lot. Like, I have the MLB app for MLB All Access, and like every other game that I'm watching has a video encoding error, or the app crashes in the middle of the game and I have to start the whole thing all over again and remember what inning I'm on when I'm watching, or something along those lines. For the week I've had my Xbox, I haven't had that problem. And on top of that, the apps are updated to have newer features than they are on the PS5, which blows my mind. I'm like, why are they not updating this on the PS5? That's crazy. Yeah, as multimedia, the Xbox I think is a lot better. But it depends on games, really. So if it's a multi-platform game and there's nothing particularly different with either console, I'll probably get it on Xbox. But yeah, I'm not gonna shun the PS5 now that I have the Xbox. But I just think so far, and this might just be new console smell that's infecting me, but I kind of like the Xbox a little bit better.
yeah, and to your point about the textured checkering on the back of the Xbox controllers,
Yeah.
that is actually one gripe that I do have with the PS5 DualSense, that the checkering is super minimal.
Yeah.
It's just barely there, and for me, I would love to just have a much better checkering texture on the back of the DualSense controllers.
Yeah.
And the irony is that Scuff Corsair, because for people who don't know this, Corsair did buy out Scuff.
Mm-hmm.
They are now licensed to make their pro gaming controllers for PS5 now.
Oh.
And the Scuff Reflex Pro has just been debuted for PS5, and it has some excellent texturing on the back. And for me, I was just like, see, This would have been nice if it was a 100% official PlayStation product, because fortunately I've heard nightmares from Scuff's warranty process, which makes me a little bit hesitant to drop um, Xbox Elite controller money or more on one of the Scuff controllers, because I've heard and read nightmares about just any sort of warranty work if you have problems with your Scuff controllers, whereas Microsoft with the Xbox Elite, either Gen 1 or Gen 2 controllers, Xbox will support the hell out of those things, even though I've heard stories of people's Elite controllers just going kaput pretty hard, but I don't know if it's just maybe how they're playing their games or not, but I haven't had problems with either my Gen 1 or my Gen 2 Xbox Elite controllers, so maybe I'm an outlier, who knows, but at least I know they're well supported.
Yeah.
But yeah, just for me, that's the one gripe I have with the DualSense, that I wish the texturing and the checkering was better, because just on top of the tops of the controllers being real slick and all, with no sort of rubberiness to kind of keep them planted in your hand, the back minimal texturing doesn't help either. So especially for intense sessions of gaming, it can be a little bit kind of crummy to kind of keep a hold on the controller. Whereas yeah, the Xbox controllers, while they don't do anything new from the original Xbox One, they're still solid controllers.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Zero, that is the end of the first episode of the Capital Games podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, like, subscribe, and don't forget to comment on the bottom if you have any thoughts on the podcast. If you are getting this on your favorite podcasting app, please rate us 5 stars on that podcast app and leave a comment saying how much you like our podcast. If you have any questions or comments, or you just want to hit us up, you can email us at zerowizcast@gmail.com. So on that note, thank you for listening. I am the Wiz.
And I'm Zero.
And we'll talk to you next time.